We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today. Good evening, welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is me and Gibbo tonight. Supermax still AWOL, but he is home. We mentioned it last week. We had a little message off Carol this week, just an update, and he's still in a lot of pain, John. Supermax, though, will come through, I'm sure, and I'm sure we'll have him back on in no time.
Yeah, he's a gutsy guy. He proved that as a footballer, and he will be back with us. It's taking a little longer than all of what would like, and he's just waiting for the medical breakthrough, but it will come. He's in pain, but he's okay, if you know what I mean. He's not in crisis, and that's the big thing. So we'll look forward to welcoming him back shortly and having all the wacky nonsense that we always have, which is absolutely terrific. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, good stuff. As always, an hour to talk about our favourite team, Newcastle United, and a game to look forward to, which we'll cover at the end of the show. Your chance as well to ask Gibbo some questions if you've got one, or me. And Tom Dixon asked earlier on in the day, he says, John, what's your thoughts on this referee's chief, Howard Webb? He says there's been an 80% reduction in the number of VAR errors this season. What's your thoughts on that, John?
I haven't quite noticed it, actually, Steve. I would have thought there's as many as there's ever been. I mean, the funny thing is that we brought in VAR, or Football Authority brought in VAR, to eliminate errors. That's what we're supposed to do, wasn't it? Eliminate all the errors that referees could make. And it's made more errors itself. Again, the human errors on it. It's the way they're interpreted by the people sitting on high. I yearn for the days when football was simple, mate. And, it was 11v11 kicking a ball about, and you got a result at the end of it. Now we spend, the part that infuriates me, just going off at a tangent, Steve, and I don't know about you and the fans, but it's when we score a goal and you sort of half celebrate, but you don't know if it's going to be given, and then the players stand around for what seems an interminable length of time before the referee points to the centre circle and says it's a goal, and there's a half-hearted cheer, we can't get too excited in case it's going to be ruled out. Which has taken a lot of the instant joy out of football for me. I want to celebrate immediately and know it's a goal, and that's terrific. At least on the ones where the ball comes off the crossbar and hasn't crossed the line or not, he gets a buzz on his watch and we're into business straight away. But this business of standing around, allowing players to get cold and us with our hearts in the mouth, wondering whether it's a goal or not, doesn't add to the excitement of football at all, does it?
No, definitely doesn't. Made it worse for me. I've got to be honest. VAR has been an absolute pain in the backside, and there should have been a bit more thought gone into it. I think it seems to work in other situations, but football seems to be miles behind where it should be. So the fact that they're saying that it's an improvement, I'm not sure what games they're watching. Ian Brownlee and a couple of others in the chat. Tom Dixon, another one. Seen the training pics yesterday. No sign of Wilson or Isaac. It's a worrying sign. Tom Dixon saying, I'm hearing today that Wilson may need more time before he's come back. And Ian followed that up with no doubting Wilson's ability. Unfortunately, he's injured 75% of the season. Time to let him go. And Christabel says, without one of them back, we might as well park the bus and hope for a 0-0. And Jules, always looking on the bright side of life, like Monty Python, says, don't forget no picks may just mean Eddie can keep the opposition guessing as to players' availability. I hope Julie is right amongst all of those. Craig Hope is reporting that Isak will be available tomorrow. What have you heard, John? Any rumours coming out of the St James's Park rumour mill? Is Wilson going to need more time?
Yeah, well, to be truthful, he's had more time than Great Train Robber's got, hasn't he? I mean, dear, oh dear, oh dear. As far as Isak's concerned, the word I'm told is that he will be available. I mean, often when they're not on the pitches are just taken during the immediate start of a training session, and perhaps they're warming up on the side or having a bit more treatment. They're just not taking part at the particular moment when the pictures are taken. So it doesn't mean 100% that somebody isn't available. I'm told that Isak will be. Wilson, I mean, you know, goodness gracious me, is Peter Sellers used to say in that film. I mean, how long is it since we last saw him, apart from the 9 minutes in the last game of last season? And to be truthful, and I don't want to be harsh, because it is one of the listeners was saying there, he's a wonderful player when he's available, but 75% of the time he isn't available. And you know, even if he is available, Steve, he's available for about a quarter of an hour at the end of the game, isn't he? I mean, he hasn't trained pre-season, never mind this season, and he hasn't played since early in the year. So there's no way that Wilson, whenever he comes back, will be ready for a start. He'll be ready for a quarter of an hour at the end of a game. And that can make a difference in a quarter of an hour. A blink of an eye can make a difference. But I mean, it's not a significant difference. The same happens with Lewis Miley, who has been seen on the training ground in the pitches. But I mean, Lewis Miley last played in March or something. So even if he's available for Saturday and is one of the 9 on the bench, you're going to get quarter of an hour out of mid-best, aren't you? He's not going to affect the game. He's not going to even be contemplated as a starter, him or Callum Wilson, when they make the first team squad on match day, because they're so far behind on match sharpness. So, you know, you're not looking at them for the team, where you're looking at Isak and saying, well, he'll go straight back in the team. And he's very, very necessary because, you know, we've played okay in the last 2 games against Man City and against Everton. I think in approach play, Steve, in both those games, we've played well, but we haven't had a finisher. We've had a 1-1 and a 0-0 because without Isak in the side, and you know, we just haven't had a natural finisher. We need Isak back, not only because he's a top quality centre forward, which he is, but it allows Gordon to revert to what he is, which is a top quality winger, not a top quality false 9. So we benefit twofold with Isak because we'll get the real Gordon back as well. But I think Isak will play. Wilson or Miley would be a bench job for the last quarter of an hour at best.
Yeah, and midfield isn't really an issue at the moment. We've got a multitude of midfielders who can play. So, you know, great to have Lewis Miley back, but it's probably a headache for Eddie Howe trying to keep everybody happy moving forward. Although Joe Linton might be able to do him a favour if he gets booked at the weekend. He'll be banned for a game. John, I've got to ask you.
There's always a chance of Big Joe getting booked, mate. I mean,
yeah. Oh, 100%, mate, 100%. Well, let's just take it international for a short while. And you know what I'm going to ask you. Of course, Alan Little asked as well. John, a German England manager, are you comfortable with that? I am, he says, as long as we win something. Cristobal says, I don't think foreign managers should be allowed, but since there's no rule, I back the choice of Tuchel. But if we do win something, prepare for the Scots, Welsh and Irish to say it took a German to do it. And Ian Brownlee says, if he wasn't German, nothing would be said. Sadly, when he loses a game, he'll be slaughtered by the press. Lots of mixed views on this, and there has been over the course of the last couple of days on NUFC matters. My view is quite simple. He's come in to manage us, and he's not the first foreign manager. I doubt he'll be the last. I'm just pleased they made the decision, and the decision wasn't Eddie Howe, John.
Well, that's the biggest thing. You've taken the words right out of my mouth, Steve. The biggest thing I was going to say is if people have been saying to me, what about Tuchel getting into the England job? I said it's terrific because it means Eddie Howe isn't going to get it. And that's very, very important to us. As for a foreign manager, I don't care. If he wins something, we've got foreign managers all over the Premier League, haven't we? It's nothing new in this country. And by the way, would anybody complain, any England fan be complaining if Pep had been given the job? They wouldn't have said, oh, we don't want Pep because he's a Spaniard, would they? They would be saying, oh, wonderful, England might win something again. So I've got nothing from that point of view. He is a winner when you look at his CV. He's won something in every country that he's managed at club level. He does bring an awful lot of baggage with him, of course, Steve. He's very confrontational. He'll fall out with the FA, no danger. He's fallen out with every board he's ever managed. He's fell out with Chelsea and he fell out with Bayern Munich big time. So he's very confrontational with players and he's very confrontational with those immediately above him. So it'll be a nice, juicy ride for the FA. It'll be a bit of a bucking bronco for them, but he is capable of producing silverware. I mean, he won the European Cup for Chelsea. So he is capable of producing silverware, and I guess that's the bottom line because, we've just had a Mr. Nice Guy in charge of England, Gareth Southgate, who went very, very close, but didn't win an egg cup. So, this guy might do that. It's going to be fun to watch because he's confrontational. Can you remember when he swung Conte around by the hand?
Yeah.
When he was with Chelsea and Spurs. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be good to watch. I've got no hang up about him being a German or about him being foreign. Because football, it's like Newcastle United. I mean, we like a Geordie to be in the side, but we don't care if a Swede scores the winning goal against Brighton in Isaac, do we? We don't care if a Brazilian dominates midfield, whether it's Big Joe or whether it's Bruno. That's the way life is, the current life of football. I mean, you've got to go back to the 50s, 60s and 70s when 99% of players in this country were all British. I mean, we booked the trend, Newcastle United, when we had George Robellido in the 50s Cup sides from Chile, unheard of at the time, and unheard of in 1969 when we had Ben Arentoft, Dane, in the side that won the European Fairs Cup. Unheard of then to have foreign players, but now it's just par for the course. It's a global village, isn't it, football, and that's fine.
Yeah, and it means the national press will not have anything to poke us with, but I'm sure they'll find something else, John, at some point.
They won't leave us alone, that's for certain.
Alan Little, change in tact. He says, what's your favourite ever band and your favourite ever gig, John? He's asked me as well. He says, my favourite band of all time was The Jam. And he says, the best gig that I've been to was U2 at Celtic Park, and it was the Zoo TV tour in 1993. So I'm sure between us we can find out. My favourite ever band was the same as you, Alan, The Jam. I've got to be honest, that was my first band that I got into, 100% for me. The best gig is difficult. I'm going to go a little bit left field. I've been to so many recent ones. Springsteen, I've seen him numerous times at Wembley. I've seen him in Scotland. Scotland was a really good gig. But the one that I enjoyed the most was one I never thought I'd see, and it was the Sex Pistols at Crystal Palace Football Club. It was billed the Sex Pistols at the Palace, and it was obviously it wasn't Sid Vicious, But
I was going to say the Vicious Sid wouldn't be there, but
it was Glenn Matlock, of course. But it was the first time they'd been back together in a long time. It was the start of the noughties, and what an amazing experience that was. Crystal Palace's pitch. I was on the pitch. I have never been to a gig like that in my life. So that's probably my favourite gig, Alan. What about you, John? Favourite artist, favourite band, and favourite gig that you've been to over the years?
Unfortunately, I go back so far that I can remember Boadicea going over the top of the town moor in a chariot. So I go way back. As a young boy, growing up in Benmore, I was absolutely shook, rigid by Elvis Presley. It was the birth of rock and roll, and we'd gone from crooners with big ears like Bing Crosby. They'd left me absolutely comatose to sudden rock and roll, and seeing somebody like Elvis Presley doing Heartbreak Hotel, and I thought was sensational. One of the greatest sadnesses I've got is that I never saw Elvis in person. And I was going over to Las Vegas a few times in those days for various reasons, including boxing. And I always felt, well, sometime my visit will coincide with his residency in Vegas and I'll see him live. Never did. And that was a great shame. Who I did see live in Vegas way back in the old days was Sammy Davis Jr. and Judy Garland. And what a contrast. Sammy Davis Jr. was absolutely fabulous, the ultimate professional. The guy, the singer, the dancer, he put on a wonderful show. I went with Len Shackleton. Len Shackleton was my mate, and we were on the trip together. And Shaq turned up and knocked on the door one night in the hotel room, and I'm sitting in sweatshirt and whatever, and he's immaculate in a three-piece suit with a shirt with his initials on the pocket, and he's dressed up. And he says, "What are you doing, Gibbo?" I said, "I'm having a few cans and watching the telly. I've spent all my dough." He says, "We've got to go out. We're going to go and see some shows." I said, "You what?" He said, "Look, when Sunderland played over in the States, one of the conditions of the matches was that he played because he was the Clown Prince of soccer. And so he got a special amount of cash from clubs to pay. And he never bought it home. He put it in the American bank. So while we were over in Vegas, he drew on that. And he took me to see Sammy Davis Jr. one night. We went and saw Judy Garland the next night. And she was so far gone, bless her, gone with the fairies, that she actually come on and start singing, shout her back to the audience. She was facing the back of the stage, and all the Americans got up and cheered and clapped and everything. And I'm thinking, "No, you're going to turn around, girl. I want to make certain it's you."
Wow.
And bands that I liked after that. I mean, I loved, and I was privileged to go and see Buddy Holly in Newcastle and see Eddie Cochran in Newcastle. Now, a few people think I'm a jinx because Buddy Holly died in a air crash within a year of his concert at the City Hall in Newcastle. And Eddie Cochran died within a month in a car crash after his gig at the Empire in Newcastle. So perhaps I was a jinx. Both of them died immediately afterwards. I was actually privileged to see them, and they were real rock and rollers, and I loved them. But I've liked music all the way through, and I mean, a lot of the stars that I saw, sometimes I saw them at St. James's Park, like Bruce Springsteen, your mate, your favourite. And then when I owned Gateshead, we put concerts on at Gateshead, and I sat in the director's box watching the show for free because I was chairman of Gateshead. It's about the only wonderful thing I got out of my time at Gateshead, apart from spending my money to keep the club alive. And I watched Rod Stewart there, who was a huge favourite of mine, Tina Turner, who was a huge favourite of mine, and I watched Simply Red, and enjoyed all those. All those have been terrific. But I've liked everybody right up to Oasis now, and they're getting together again. So my musical tastes have been very strong, and they've been there throughout all the years, and they were awakened in me as a kid doing rock and roll. I went to see Bill Haley in the Odeon in Newcastle. Can you believe that? With his Kiss Curl on the front of his forehead. I mean, he looked about 106, and he's playing a part of a rock and roller. Quite incredible, really. But they were happy days because they were legendary figures to go and see. And one of my greatest favourites from the old days was Chuck Berry, with that walk across the. And if you've seen a better guitarist, and I'm even almost tempted to put Eric Clapton into that, then you've done well. He was some entertainer, was Chuck Berry.
Yeah, I saw Eric Clapton this year. That's another tick in the box. I managed to see the Rolling Stones just before Charlie Watts died. So that was a tick in the box for me. I'm going to see Macca this year. I've never seen Paul McCartney, and I've also got soundcheck tickets for that. So that's quite an expensive trip, but it's a once in a lifetime thing. Saw Bruce a couple of times again this season. I managed to see AC/DC this year. I'd never seen them before, which was another big moment. But I enjoyed going to gigs. I love music gigs. I've seen the Pistols now a few times. The original setup with the Pistols. Didn't see the Jam. I was too young, but I've seen From the Jam, who had 2/3 of the Jam in, Rick Buckler and Bruce Fox, and also saw Paul Weller on many occasions, like you mentioned, Oasis, etc. But yeah, there's some great stuff. We could talk all night about that. There's some great comments as well. Fun-loving criminals in Queen's Student Arts Centre when I was a young whippersnapper, says Ian. Favourite band, says Mick, Pink Floyd. The favourite gig that I went to was Genesis at Old Trafford, 2007. I managed to get on the centre circle spot and spit on it, he says, at Old Trafford. Les Stapleton says, saw Brian Adams and Simply Red at Gateshead. And Geordie Tumberlake says, Queen, the greatest rock band ever, in my opinion. Rest in peace, Freddie. And Ian Brownlee says, Jesus, I've been so lucky. I've seen so many favourite bands. But my favourite band is Oasis. I've seen them in Belfast a few times. And Les says, Iggy Pop at the City Hall with David Bowie on keyboards was interesting. Wow, what a recollection that is. And Alan Little, we'll finish up with you before John gives us another one. He says, Liam Payne, sadly another celeb dying in a hotel in suspicious circumstances. Yeah, rest in peace to Liam, awful that. He says, just like Hutchins. He says, I met In Excess at the Copthorne Hotel bar the night of their arena gig in 97, minus Michael Hutchins, who was still in his own room. So there we go. John, you were going to say something else?
Yeah, just a couple of others that sprung to mind while we were talking. A little while back with Glenn McCrory, my mate, and somebody you know well as well, Steve, we brought over Jerry Lee Lewis for a concert at the City Hall in Newcastle because he'd said in his autobiography that his favourite venue had been the City Hall. When he married his 14-year-old cousin. You probably don't remember, but
I know the story.
Yeah, he married his 14-year-old cousin. Everybody went crackers in this country. He was deported back home, and he couldn't play in this country. He then came back to resume the tour whenever, a couple of years later or whatever. And his first gig was back in Newcastle, which was on the original tour. And he was so wonderfully received when he had great trepidation about coming here. He wrote that the most wonderful gig that he'd ever done was the City Hall in Newcastle. So Glenn and I, being the stupid young buggers we were, got in touch with him and said, how about coming, got in touch with him in Memphis and said, how about coming back to the City Hall in Newcastle? Because he had mentioned that, and unbelievably we got him to come here. And he stayed in the Copthorne for 3 nights. We put him on at the City Hall. He did a Howard Hughes. He locked himself in his bedroom, had games brought into his bedroom, video games to play, etc. Had all his meals in his bedroom, never left the bedroom until half an hour before he was due to City Hall, whipped up in a car, played the gig and come off. He was terrific. His voice was still absolutely magnificent. But of course, 2 unique moments of song in my life that must be recorded for posterity was John McNamee singing in 1969 after we won the European Fairs Cup. At the banquet afterwards, John McNamee in a falsetto voice, where he was singing all the big gruff John McNamee with a falsetto voice. Can you believe that? He was singing all his songs, and of course then fast forward from 69 to 74 Cup final, and when we were waiting to play that, There we had Frank Clark in the hotel with his guitar every night singing Peggy Sue through a lisp. And that was quite an experience as well, which has been missed by most of the world. So I'm hoying John McNamee and Frank Clark into my musical memories.
I love it. Ian Brownlee says the Charlatans were class, as were the Killers. Colton says, I saw Paul Weller in the Keeley gig. And Seacrest Boxer says, best rock band I've seen in decades was in February. Dirty Honey, amazing. They were so good. So there we go. Dirty Honey, want to maybe look up. Rosa, good evening. Says Simply Red, Kylie, Brian Adams, M People, Tavares Rose, Rose Royce, Tavares, Boney M. So lots of choice there. And Tom says, I'm wanting to see what this Sam Fender announcement's about. I think it's a new album, Tom. He's been recording a new album. I think that's what it'll be about. Mick Millian says, I'm going to the match on Saturday. Then I'm going to the Glass House. He says to see Steve Hackett, who is ex-Genesis. So there, lots of gigs. Rosa's going down memory lane as well. The Foundations, Take That, ABC, Imagination, and Rick Astley. So we've all got a wide range of music. That's what we're going to say. Lindisfarne as well. Yeah, good old Lindisfarne. Denise, good evening. She said loads of bands and seen loads, but biggest privilege was Stevie Ray Vaughan before he died. Is it Stevie Ray Vaughan or Stevie Ray Vaughan? Maybe Denise, maybe typo that. But fantastic, great stuff. Thanks for sharing your bands and your gigs. My favourite memory, although I wasn't there, is that story that people tell of David Bowie coming out at Roker Park and saying, "Good evening, Newcastle." Wow, that was fantastic. We'll have a quick ad break. We'll be back after this. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them, www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can contact them at their website, mrvickies.co.uk. Email info@mrvickies.co.uk. or telephone 01768 210 102. A big thanks to our NUFC Matters fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. They are the Travel and Tourism Award winners 2024. 2-crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. All excursions included. Contact them at their website, www.unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com or telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. A big thanks to Media Arts for all the technical side of things. And don't forget, we are also a podcast and you can find us on iTunes, Spotify or other podcast providers. If you want to help the channel, you can hit the like button, which is the little thumb under each video. You can click the share button to share it to other social media, or subscribe to the channel. Hit the subscribe button and it is for free. We still do 7 shows a week. Hit the join button and you can join the channel for $1.99 a month to help support us. We do promote events on this channel. Derek Wright is holding his official book launch at the Tyneside Irish Centre. 15th of November, tickets are £22 and that does include a signed book. Tickets are from newcastlelegends.com. Gold Star Promotions and Gateshead Leisure Centre are bringing Lennox Lewis to the area as part of his UK tour. You can get tickets by calling 0191 250 5066. Tickets start at £39. The Long Sands are back in aid of Dementia Matters and being supported by Lilac Lane and the Chris Norris Band. Saturday, January the 4th, 2025. Tickets £15 from newcastlelegends.com or from the Clooney box office. Peter Beardsley will be at the Tyneside Irish Centre on the 10th of January, 2025. Tickets are available from newcastlelegends.com or from Woucher. An Evening with the Entertainers takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House, the 24th of January, 2025. You can buy tickets for that now from the box office, 0844 249 1000, or from the website, tynetheatreandoperahouse.uk. And the Magpie Lounge is now open at Gateshead Leisure Centre. 7 tokens for £99. Call 0191 250 5066 to book your tickets today. And the first of those talk-ins will be the 31st of January, an evening with Lee Clark. If you just want to buy tickets separately, call 0191 250 5066. And the book everyone's talking about, The Entertainers, 1992 to 1997, Kevin Keegan's legacy, is on sale now. The book will be posted out on the 1st of December, written by Will Scott, over 30 contributors to this book. newcastlelegends.com or Amazon to buy it today. Okay, Yvonne says Bowie, Stones, 10cc, Diana Ross, Patti Smith, all the first times in Newcastle. They were brilliant. Ian says Van Morrison played a gig in the street he used to live in called Cypress Avenue, not far from where I live. That was once in a lifetime, though. And yeah, lots of other bands coming in, but we're going to turn our attention back to football. Les, thank you for the promotion. Anyone who hasn't signed up to bigup.com yet, there's another show with Steve and Joe Allen available. Great stories as always. Thank you, Les. Yeah, we are helping out the Americans across the pond who've set up this thing called Big Up. And Tom Richardson is doing the match day live on Saturday. I believe he's got Barry Hogan and Joe Allen joining him as well. So good luck to them. I won't be able to watch. I'll be at the match. But yeah, I hope they do well. But yeah, bigup.com/NUFC Matters is where to go to watch that. And please give it a subscription. Steve Middlemas says, any news on Darren Neal's replacement with the announcement of his illness, John? Still nothing. It's all very quiet on that at the moment, isn't it?
No, absolutely. And to a certain extent, there isn't a rush. You can't rush decisions like this because you can live to regret it. But there isn't a rush in as much as while it's awful that Darren has got the illness that he's got and all our sympathy goes out with him, he is able to work on for the moment for anything up to about 12 months. Before there'll be a need to withdraw. And so he's got time to continue doing the job he has been doing and help in finding the right person in Newcastle United's eyes to take over from him. So there isn't the dire necessity there would be if he was leaving tomorrow, or it was a manager of the club you need where you've got to get in quick and get somebody quick. There's no rush on that one, so it will be ongoing for a short while, yes.
Paul Patterson says, I've read a good article in the mag today featuring Gibbo. He said some good anecdotes. One question I'd ask is, who was Gibbo's top 2 or 3 cult hero players that did a cracking job but didn't get a status?
That's brilliant question, and it really takes some thinking, because when you say don't get status, I guess it's what do you mean by status? I mean, is status just if you become a legendary number 9, or you're a Peter Beardsley, or you're a Shea Given, who are superstars in Newcastle United's history? Or would you include people like Nobby Solano or Gary Speed, who were absolutely immaculate, but don't immediately come to mind as the legends of Newcastle United, but are very close to being that. We've had an awful lot of if people it's as good as that. And I mean, you know, when you go back to the Entertainers, looking at one of the recent great sides, you immediately think with the Entertainers of Shearer and Beardsley and Philip Albert and Ginola and Les Ferdinand. But there was loads of people in there just beneath that, you know, Scott Sellers in the early days, Killer Kilcline, Lee Clark was part of that, Steve Watson was part of that, Pav was part of that, who were super servants to Newcastle United of no mean ability, and where would we have been without them? And if you look at the Newcastle United history, you know, you look at people like Paul Goddard that played centre forward for Newcastle and scored in 8 successive games, etc. And where would we be without guys like him that kept us afloat? So we've had a lot of not nearly men, but nearly superstar men. And we've also had a lot of gloss, by the way, but we're not going to get into that. Otherwise, we might get legal notification in the post tomorrow morning. But by Jove, we've had some of them as well, and that's an interesting topic. And I tend to want to forget about them, but sometimes I can't.
Frank Story's put a message in the chat. He says, "Get well soon." Message for Elaine from the week. He was in the QE. I'm sure that makes somebody very happy, Frank. So thanks for putting that out there. Darren, good evening. He says, "Hi, Stephen John. Question for you: with Manchester City winning their case against the Premier League, do you think things will change for Newcastle?" I mean, I don't think there's been official confirmation that they've won. I think there's been a lot of noise, John. We've got Keith Patterson on the Three Amigos tomorrow to try and make sense of the latest turn of events, but there seems to be a lot of positivity coming from the Manchester City camp, doesn't there? And maybe it is good news. Maybe it is good news for Newcastle if they win that case.
Yeah, well, we're talking two separate things with Man City, aren't we? They won the case, but it's not the case for the 105 complaints about them, the 105 court cases. That's still happening. That's still to come. But they jumped the gun, and where they won the case, and a lot of jealous clubs give evidence against them, was over the sponsorship deals, etc., etc. And Newcastle actually give evidence in support of them, and that case has been won, and it is. Although the Premier League are trying to pretend it hasn't been won by putting a different interpretation on it, a different slant on it. But that is good news for Newcastle. There's no question about that. But the real thing that we're all waiting to see, which is fascinating, is what happens with these 105 charges that they've been, they were hit with donkeys years ago and are just getting heard now. You can't believe there's going to be 105 not guilty verdicts, can you?
No, you definitely can't.
No.
Mark Byers says, "Gibbo, don't you think it's time that the club buried the hatchet with Peter Beardsley? He's still our best ever player for me. It's a disgrace that he doesn't seem to be welcome." I mean, it is sad, I think, that Peter's not been included in anything that I've seen in recent times. We know that he had the fallout at the club, but the guy's a legend. For me, there should be a statue of Peter Beardsley, or a stand named after him. He's that kind of guy. He did so much, not once, but twice for our club, and then went on to work behind the scenes, with an unblemished record. And for me, I think Mark's right. I don't know what the ins and outs are behind the club, but it would be nice to see him recognised officially in some way, shape or form. And bury the hatchet is maybe a term I wouldn't use, because we don't know if there's a hatchet to be buried. It was the previous owners, of course, who were dealing with Peter in that moment in time. These owners are new owners. They wouldn't be judged, I don't think, if they welcomed Peter in.
I mean, for me, I've gone on record in print and on podcasts like this one for an awful long time, and in front of live audiences, saying, in my humble opinion, for what it's worth, in our 130-year history, he is the most talented player in Newcastle United's history. Because when we think of footballers, and it's difficult to compare them all, how do you compare a goalkeeper to a centre forward? But really, what we talk about with football is the great takers of goals and the great makers of goals. And for me, Peter Beardsley was both. He could make them and he could take them. He had wonderful vision, wonderful feet, a gentle touch, a vicious shot. He was everything that epitomizes a top player. And for me, he is the best player Newcastle United have had in their history. So from that point of view alone, he almost stands alone. And the great sorrow is, and as you say, the problems, and I use that in inverted quotes, were came to light during the previous regime, not this regime. But I would love this regime to make them feel welcome within St James's Park, because I know personally that Peter is very hurt, because it is the club of his heart. He has played for great clubs like Liverpool, and he played for Everton, where he enjoyed his time immensely, etc., etc. But he's a Geordie who twice played for Newcastle. First time round as a kid, second time round when KK brought him back. and he is an exceptional player. He is black and white through and through, and he's very, very hurt with what he perceives as not being welcome within St James's Park. Now, politics are obviously afloat here, etc., etc. I think that's a great shame. When I see heroes that aren't welcome within football clubs, I have a very heavy heart. There's Peter Beardsley at Newcastle, there's Graham Sharp, where it's happened to him with Everton, where he's one of the greatest players Everton had. He helped them win the championship with Peter Reid, etc., etc., and he is hounded out of there because of his association with owners who were disliked. And I hate to see that. I have a heavy heart, and I can only talk from my point of view, and all that I can think of with Peter Beardsley is the joy he's brought me as a footballer, watching him play for my club with the inventiveness, the talent, the entertainment that he had available to him. And he is a Geordie, and I think he ought to be part of our club. I love our heroes. They're epitome of what the club is all about, and he is unquestionably a Newcastle United hero.
Yeah, original Geordie Maradona, Pedro says Roger. Mark says Beardsley's an absolute gentleman as well, humble with a heart of gold. He'd do anything to help anybody. Jackie Nicholson says, met Pedro loads of times. He's a top bloke. He was a genius on the pitch. And Denise says, I think the club should just make an unexcused, unexplained welcome back to Peter Beardsley. Don't give fuel to those negative rumours. Let's just get Peter back where he belongs. And Paul Patterson said, sorry to repeat, but a Legends bar in the ground would be great. Smaller scale statues of many players in a bar or lounge that is frequented on a match day, perhaps. And Steve Middlemas says, I don't think the club would allow Pedro back in a capacity because of his ban, unfortunately. But lots of positivity, lots of people saying that they would like to see Peter Beardsley back in Newcastle. Come on, Newcastle, make it happen. You know, it doesn't have to be a big fanfare, but just make that gesture. He is one of our heroes, and he's one of the top players in my time as Newcastle, if not one of the best. Paul says he was at Burton's testimonial against the Mackhams at St James's Park. They brought the FA Cup along, which they just won. Imagine them doing that now. And Dean says, Peter Beardsley, Long Benton's finest, the one and only. And Stephen Kennedy says, John, the first Toon goalie I saw was Gordon Marshall. What did you think of him, or any stories about him?
Yeah, I remember when I first started reporting on Newcastle United for the Chronicle. Big Gordon was the goalkeeper. I saw him regularly after that when he was brought down to Tyne side for various dues that were on. And the big lad, I think his son went on and played in Scotland as a goalkeeper. Big Marsh played alongside Bob Moncur and from that era. Was a very competent goalkeeper. Did a good job for us. Cracking bloke, an absolutely top of the range guy. At a time where we didn't have superstar goalkeepers. I think for a long time, out of the two 50s goalkeepers, which was Jack Fairbrother and Ronnie Simpson, until we got to the age of Shea Given, and really in that, Willie McFall was a wonderful servant to Newcastle and won the Fairs Cup and then become assistant coach, manager. He was there for donkey's years and without ever being a superstar goalkeeper. And I think Shea Given was the one that broke them all there. But a lot of time for Marsh, terrific guy, as Scottish as they come. And he played in the Monk side and is loved by all the players from that era that are still around, like Bobby Monks and Frank Clark and David Craig, etc., etc.
Yeah, great stuff, great memories, and some great questions coming in tonight. Some great memories shared as well by Gibbo. And yeah, I would say for me as well that the stuff that's coming through about Peter Beardsley is well deserved in the chat. So thank you for all chipping in with that. Tom's got
what you're asking for, Steve, with Peter is not a fanfare. There doesn't have to be a big public announcement. There doesn't have to be anything said. There's no need for that. I mean, if the hand of friendship is extended and he is welcome within the bosom of the club on match days, and that's all we're asking for at this stage. We're not asking for a statue to be erected yet. We're not asking for a fanfare and a trumpet. We're not asking for the current regime to go against the previous regime or anything like that. Just make a little guy who's got a love for the club and served it so well as one of the greatest players I've ever had, if not the greatest. Just make him feel welcome within his own club. That's the small thing I'm asking. Just do that. That's enough. That's the first step. Just do that.
He's more welcome at the moment at Man City, and that's bizarre, bearing in mind how many times he played for Man City. And, Liverpool, he goes down there, etc. He goes all over, Peter, and, he's great. You're working with him again twice in January at the Entertainers, and then, of course, at the Irish Centre. And, we have some great nights. I could listen to Peter all day, and we haven't even scratched the surface. You've worked with him. I've worked with him. Joe's worked with him. We've all done talkings, and you go to a Peter Beardsley talking, you hear a different story that you haven't heard, or two different stories, or three different stories. Like I say, you've only scratched the surface. He's an amazing guy, an amazing fella, and I just hope that it can all be sorted out. Frank says Beardsley's he served his sentence. Disgraceful that he's been ostracised. And Pedro, what a role model and a professional legend, worthy of being a big part at the club. Darren, back on to other things. He says, John, how many points do you think Newcastle will get from the next few games? Well, we can break them down for you, John, because obviously we have got another blasted international break coming up. So the next games, we've got Brighton, which we're going to look at shortly. Brighton at home, without giving us your prediction, John, is that a win? Is it a draw, or is it a loss?
Well, I've looked at the whole situation of the next three games. And you know why I did that originally, Steve? We're going to go back very fleetly to the musical thing. I was rummaging through a box of memorabilia I had upstairs, and I come upon the programme and everything when Eddie Cochran played Newcastle. And within a month, he was dead in a car crash down in Bristol after a gig in Bristol. And it was the same tour that I had seen him on. And his great record was soared to number one upon his death with 3 steps to heaven. And I thought, we've got our 3 steps, either to heaven or hell, coming up starting on Saturday, because the next 3 games are all against clubs above us currently in the table, which makes them huge. Now, if we are going to get into Europe, and that is the plan, please may it be the Champions League, if not one of the other 2. If we're going to get into Europe, we've got to get something out of these 3 games. There's other games after that, but you can't, and especially as we drop 2 points against Everton, because we normalised them and drew out now. Now, that was a poor result. So we need to get something out of these 3 games. And they're tough. They're all against sides above us. It's Brighton at home, it's Chelsea away, and it's Arsenal at home. This isn't the Premier League. We've got Chelsea as well in the League Cup. So what are we going to get out of those 3 games? Now, for me, the most winnable of the 3 games, and I'm not meaning that we can't win the other 2, but the most winnable is Brighton at home. Chelsea away and Arsenal at home is tougher than Brighton at home, in my opinion. So I want to start with a win there. Now, if we get a win there and we draw at home to Arsenal, as we did with Man City, which wouldn't be a bad result, that would be 4 points. What do you think we would need at Chelsea to make it a decent return out of the 9 points available to us, Steve?
From my perspective, mate, I'm looking at these games now. I'm just going through the fixture list, right? Brighton at home. I think that's the toughest game, only because of
the world.
Only because of Minty, and the whole Minty thing is a big thing. I think Chelsea away, being down there as I have been many a time, and I'll be down there again for this game. I've never really seen I've seen Newcastle play well down there many times, but only seen us, the wonder goals from Cisse were a one-off. You know, we always seem to struggle down there. Even in the entertainers era, we always seem to struggle down there. There's your two hard games. I think Chelsea at home in the Cup and Arsenal at home in the league. I think they're both winnable. Forest away, really, Newcastle should win that. But a lot will depend on what has happened in the previous 4 games before we go to Forest. Injuries, performances, etc. But the question, if you're going to ask us for a points prediction, John, I'm going to say we're going to beat Brighton narrowly. I think we'll lose at Chelsea, but I think we'll beat them in the Cup. I think we'll win against Arsenal, hopefully with a controversial goal, which they can go on about for weeks on end. And I think we'll beat Forest. So I'm going to go, there's 3 points, 6 points, 9 points. I'm going 9 points out of that, and to still be in the Cup, John. We'll settle for that, wouldn't we?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I agree with all those results bar one. I think we will definitely beat Brighton, as definite as you can be. I thought we'll definitely beat Everton, but we'll definitely beat Brighton. I think we will just get tucked up with Chelsea, though I can see us getting a draw under certain circumstances, but they always do for us. I mean, even last season, I mean, we had them beaten in the League Cup in 92nd minute. Trips went walkabout. They got a goal and beat us on penalties. I think we'll do Forest, absolutely. The one thing that I'm slightly more apprehensive about in you is beating Arsenal.
I thought you were going to say Chris Wood.
Sorry?
I thought you were saying, when you said apprehensive, it was going to be Chris Wood. Got to be worried about him. He got a hat trick against last season.
I'm apprehensive that we buy him back in January as an understudy to Isak, because
he scored more than Isak this season.
Would you have him before Isak?
No.
Now answer the question.
I'd have him on the bench.
Eh?
I'd have him on the bench to come on.
Oh, please don't break my heart.
I can hear Malcolm crying now.
If we could, yeah, I was going to say he's just had a setback. We're trying to get him fit. He's just had a setback because he's heard you say that. And he has scored goals this season. It's been quite amazing considering he did. And I can see an Ocean going liner turn quicker than him. But it is quite amazing. But no, Arsenal, getting back to that, I mean, I'd love to do them because what a whinging so-and-so there. And the manager is a very, very good manager. But unless you're a gooner, he drives you flipping crackers, isn't he? I mean, the way he goes on the touchline, and what an argumentative, miserable, aggravating so-and-so he is. But apart from that, he's a nice lad. But I mean, I would love to beat Arsenal, but I think that'll be tough because I think them and Man City are a class above whatever else is in the Premier League, and I include Liverpool in that under slot, etc., etc. I think they're the two class acts, and therefore I think it's going to be difficult against Arsenal. Not impossible, not by any means, but you know what? For me, the mood is going to be set by Brighton.
Yes.
If we beat Brighton, then the mood is positive. Yeah. If we draw or lose against Brighton, then the mood is negative. The mood for these games will be set by the result against Brighton. And it's got to be a win because we dropped 2 points against Everton.
Yeah.
We've got to beat Brighton. We've got to beat Brighton. And, you know, I look at them, Steve, and I can see why people like them. I can see they can play pretty football. And if you stand off them and let them play it, they'll pass you to death. But I think they've got a soft underbelly, you know. They can roll over and you can tickle their tummy. If you get at them from the first whistle and get around them and rattle them, and I mean, they get some spectacular defeats. When you look at them last season and where they get some, and I think we produced one of the spectacular defeats, didn't we? We beat them 4 at one match last season. They get some spectacular defeats where you think, good God, how did that happen? They've just got beat 4, they've just got beat 5. It can happen, and I think we will beat them. But I tell you what, I want Isaac to be there. I'm not suggesting that he's the world of difference, because he hasn't quite been up to match sharpness this season. After his 25 goals last season, he was one of the blue chip players that wasn't quite what we want them to be. But I'm a great believer in him, and he leads the line intelligently, and he leads it properly, and he can finish. And as I say, it puts Gordon in one of the positions where he can cause the utmost trouble, which is on the tram lines. So if we have Isaac, I'm quite confident we win. If we're having to play with a false nine, it'll be a struggle, like it was against Everton, like it was against Man City, to get goals. But we might squeeze it 1-0. But with Isaac on the side, I'm very confident that Newcastle win on Saturday.
I'm going for a 1-0 Gibbo as well. I think it'll be tight, but I think Newcastle's defensive play has been, very, very good, with the exception of Fulham. Newcastle have really tightened up, gone back to basics in a lot of ways, but they just need to find that link between the midfield and Isaac, if Isaac is going to be fit to play. And, he needs to be firing on all cylinders, but we definitely missed it. And I still think if Isaac had played at Everton, we would have been ahead by a country mile. But hopefully play the same as we did against Everton, but with Isaac on the end of those chances, that'll be fantastic. Thanks for your team there, Tom. He says, my team would be Pope, Livramento, Shaw, Burn, Hall. Lap back four is probably going without saying. Guimaraes, Tonali, Joe Linton. Well, of course, I think that would be the midfield. Murphy, I agree. Barnes and Gordon. That's without Isaac, of course. I think if Isaac's fit, then Barnes makes way, and I think Murphy and Gordon start, and Isaac's the lone striker. I think that's just. I think we know what Eddie likes to do. Frank's taking us in a slightly different direction just before we're finished. He says one that bugs me a lot is that's sitting near me is the music at the match. He says they play it right up to the actual kickoff. He says it drowns the atmosphere. He says then he shouts, "Enjoy the game." Let the fans create the atmosphere just before kickoff. I wouldn't lay the blame at the stadium announcer's door too much, Frank. He's told what to do, like everybody is at the club. So I think he's told to play the music until then. But I guess the way to do it, is allow an atmosphere to become an atmosphere. And I think you're right, Frank. War Flags have tried to create that, but. Yeah, it's worth maybe. I know it sounds daft, Frank, but it might be worth even just sending that in to the supporters' email at the club. And if people don't know, then ultimately they're not going to change things. You never know. If people start emailing and saying this is what you need to do, then they might change things. Last few comments. Davey says, "Thanks, Stephen John. It's all debate in good heart. How are the lads?" Tom says, "Great show tonight, lads. Take care and everyone stay safe." Roger predicting a 2-1. Denise says, "Thank you, gents, Gibbo and Steve." And Steve Middlemas, we can't come to this. Maybe he's asking tomorrow. He says, "Are we playing the correct way for Isaac? When you look at him in Sweden, it's all about formations." I guess you're right. Thanks to everybody chatting. Don't forget, back tomorrow, 5 o'clock. It's the Three Amigos, and Keith Patterson will be joining us as well. We'll also have a special guest around about 6:45, so don't miss that. And we will be back together again next week, Gibbo, to see whether our predictions have been correct. Get well, Super Mac. Hope you're bearing up. And Gibbo, I will see you next week, pal.
Take care. Look forward to Big Man.